Well, I asked, where's the beef? Let's call this for what this is. Oh my God! They are so hopelessly woke. How dare you? That is the intellectual capital of the left today. Give me a break. You are now watching the Daily Roundup. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Daily Roundup on this, a Thursday, June 29th, 2023. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a little bit about my co-host, shall I? Do you know what, folks? Today is International Fisherman's Day, and my co-host celebrates this for only one reason. It so pisses off Liberal MP Frances Sobrara, who refers to fishermen as fisher folk. She is the Khaleesi of the greater Coburg area. She is Tamara Ugolini. Hey, happy International Fisherman's Day to you, Tamara. I got to tell you, you're looking very nautical in that ensemble.
That is an accurate depiction. Thanks, David. You don't really strike me as a fisherman type.
No, you know what? The only thing I ever bought from K-Tel in the mid-'70s, and I was going into grade 8, I remember, and moving to Newfoundland, of all places, was something called the pocket fisherman. Now, can you imagine? Here comes a mainlander with this piece of crap fishing rod called the pocket fisherman going to Newfoundland, where they know a thing or two about fishing. And so I was basically laughed off the rock. But in case people weren't getting the reference, about 5 years ago, Tamara Ugolini, Frances Sobrara, I think he's the MP for the riding of Woodbridge, north of Toronto. He was in the House of Commons rambling on about some fishing-related matter, and he was referring to fishermen as fisher folks. And super producer Olivia, she's going to try to find that video. I went to one source, and it said the video's been removed. So I guess the censorious blackface liberals are scrubbing the internet. The funny thing is, Tamara, is that he couldn't stay on script. He kept saying fishermen and then apologizing and then saying fisher folks, I think 2 or 3 times. So this virtue signaler woke MP, for a short little, 2-minute long speech, couldn't even get the PC terminology right. And I say this to you, Tamara, in your entire life, have you ever heard of anyone calling fishermen fisher folks?
It is absolutely insane. But, this actually doesn't come as a surprise to me, because the company that my husband previously was employed by, who arbitrarily ended his position there when the COVID mandates came into effect in the fall of 2021, they had just recently changed their business cards. So his foreman's business card was changed, and it quite literally said foreperson. They're no longer calling them foremen. They are now four people. Anyway, the company just got increasingly woke, and then the mandates came into effect, and they didn't care that he was one of their best employees. They, were all about making sure the uptake was high in their company. And when I hear things like this, calling fishermen fisher folk, it is absolutely insane and absurd. But sadly, the way that this country is going, it is not surprising that this made-up terminology.
You're right. In a sense, Tamara, Frances Sobrara was ahead of the curve. I mean, you talk about foreman becoming foreperson. I think of an increasing number of organizations, if there is the title of chief, they're getting rid of that. That is allegedly offensive to Indigenous culture. The Toronto Real Estate Board no longer refers to the master bedroom as the master bedroom. It's now the primary bedroom, because there's some kind of colonialism slave thing going on here. And I think the worst thing of all is someone like you and other biological women, well, we can't use the term breastfeeding anymore. It's chest feeding, in case some radical trans activist is, I don't know, trying to give nourishment to a baby with his male breast. So we don't want him to be offended or left out of the loop. That's outrageous. But even in nursing schools, Tamara, they're changing breastfeeding to chest feeding. This is insane.
Under the guise of being all-inclusive and tolerant. And I've seen recently that midwifery clinics, so, midwives provide individual one-on-one support to pregnant women, she, hers. They're now soliciting the pronouns of people entering their care. So this is just straight bizarro upside down world. I say, riddle me this. What has a uterus, has the capacity of growing a human and then birthing them? Because it isn't a he, him, or a they, them. It's definitely has to be a woman.
Oh, well, Tamara Ugolini, you better send that definition stateside. There's a certain U.S. Supreme Court justice, herself a woman, can I call her herself, who was unable last year to provide a definition for a woman. This is somebody on the U.S. Supreme Court. This long weekend couldn't come soon enough, Tamara, but we digress. What are we...
Yes, okay.
And by the way, I do love the ensemble. Very nautical. If you were to wear a little sailor's hat, if I checked my lotto numbers and the FU jackpot came through, I'd buy a little boat. I'd welcome you aboard it. And just to hear you say, aye, aye, Captain Menzies, that would just make my day. But
we could go sailing. I'm sure our viewers don't want to know about your strange nautical fetishes, David. Okay, so... all of that aside, we went on a little bit of a tangerine, as David would put it. So if you're joining us, this is normally not as unruly, but this is our daily stream where we are able to dissect some news of the day, offer some commentary. It's also a great way for you, our viewers at home, to tune in and join us if you're streaming with us on certain platforms. So currently we are on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and Getter. And unfortunately, due to YouTube's arbitrary community standards and the fact that we speak truth to power and question certain mainstream narratives, they have completely demonetized us. So we used to be able to receive chats on YouTube, which would help fund our independent journalism, help keep the lights on, help buy our equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, that has since come to an end, and we really risk being deplatformed there any day. So I would urge you to join us over on Rumble, Odyssey, or Getter, and on those other platforms, Rumble and Odyssey specifically. You can send us a hyper chat or super chat. Maybe I'm getting the terminology wrong there, but anyway, hopefully our viewers at home are not so technologically inept as I am. But if you join us there, you can send us a small monetary donation and we will read your comment live on air. We will also give any feedback or provide commentary on it. So it's a great way to support us and also getting some, tangible things said here on the live stream. So we have a few different newsy pieces to share with you today. And I'm just going to pull up the first one because I think it is about the increasing taxes that we're facing in Canada under the Justin Trudeau climate regime. And this particular video, it's, I think, it is a video. It comes from the Toronto Sun, Laurie Goldstein. There will be a second carbon tax. So it's an article, but there's a video as well that we can share with you. Will come into play on Canada Day. So yay, Canada. We're celebrating Canada's birthday this Saturday, July the 1st. And in honor of that, Trudeau has implemented what is essentially the second hit on Canadians under the guise of reducing carbon by taxing us in order to somehow save the planet. So Laurie did a nice little video on this. It's about 3 minutes. And I think I had to click on the Toronto Sun's YouTube channel. So in that article itself, you scroll down to the bottom, it said, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And then the YouTube channel redirects to, it should be the first video on their YouTube channel where Goldstein does this 3-minute video. And it's long, but I think if we wanted to prioritize, we could show maybe the last minute or so of it. But the whole thing, it's 3 minutes. It's a nice little segment.
And Tamara, the last time I spoke to Laurie Goldstein, which was a few years ago, I know Laurie has read, at the time, he had read 43 books on the subject of climate change. Can you imagine? I think my brain would turn to mush. So kudos to Laurie Goldstein for having the intellectual magnitude to resist that propaganda. And he's very good on this file. I'm sure he's up to maybe, 53 or 63 books by now, because he cuts to the chase. He finds the fraudulent arguments and the fake science and exposes it. So let's hear what Laurie Goldstein has to say, and I'll weigh in on the political element of carbon taxes about to hit us on Dominion Day. So take it away, Mr. Goldstein.
July 1st, the Trudeau government will be imposing what amounts to a second carbon tax on Canadians. It's called the Clean Fuel Regulations, and its purpose is to lower the carbon content of liquid fossil fuels. Now, the independent, nonpartisan parliamentary budget officer, Yves Giroux, looked at this and said, okay, by 2030, that will increase the price of gasoline by a maximum of 17 cents per liter. Now, remember, that's separate from the carbon tax. The carbon tax, which Trudeau introduced earlier, by 2030, Yves Giroux says, will increase the price alone of cost of gasoline by, I believe it's 37.57 cents per liter. So all in, that's going to be more than 54 cents per liter. And that compares to, that's a almost 300% increase from the impact of the carbon tax alone today, which is about 14 cents per liter. And of course, the problem is that when the cost of gasoline rises, the cost of almost everything rises, because almost all goods and services need to be transported somewhere. And to do that, you need fossil fuel energy. Now, the other thing about the clean fuel regulations is that unlike the carbon tax, there are no rebates. You're not going to get back any money from the government like you do when you're paying the carbon tax. And so because of that, that's what's known as, it's a regressive fee or tax. And what that means is that people who are in lower economic brackets will disproportionately pay more of their income than people in higher brackets. And that's because transportation's a necessity, and lower income people pay more of their income on necessities like transportation than people who are wealthier do. But even with the rebates, the parliamentary budget officer says that no, you have to look at also the negative impact of the carbon tax on the Canadian economy. And so the rebates aren't going to cover that. And so he looked at 4 of the provinces where, all the provinces have different systems, but in 4 provinces where they're going to pay both the carbon tax and the clean fuel regulations in 2030, what the parliamentary budget officer said, independent watchdog, nonpartisan, is that in Alberta, that'll mean for the average household about $3,500 more a year. And in Ontario, it'll be about $2,000 more a year. And in Saskatchewan, it'll be about $2,500 per year, and in Manitoba, about $1,800 per year. And remember, since we're only responsible for 1.5% of global emissions, none of that will materially affect climate change. The parliamentary budget officer points out that as well. Our emissions aren't enough. It's a global problem, and simply reducing Canada's emissions about 1.5% of the total, even if you drop them to net zero, insignificant. What it will do is give us the moral authority to ask the major emitters like China to lower their emissions. But as we all know, China doesn't really listen all that very much to us today. I'm Laurie Goldstein of Sun Media. We're always interested in hearing your views, and please follow us on Twitter.
Yeah, China doesn't really listen a lot, although Blackface listens to China a whole ton of times. Tamara, the regime he has basic admiration for, the basic dictatorship, being able to turn things around on a dime. Funny how Canada is getting more and more to the Chinese model that way. But as Laurie said, it's not going to make a tinker's dam when it comes to global emissions. Even if you believe in man-made climate change, and Tamara, I do not, the fact of the matter is, with the economy the way it is, with rising inflation, with mortgage rates, with prices soaring, just ask anyone who's shopping these days. I mean, the other day I was in Metro, I picked up a basket of groceries. I was thinking, this will be about $50, $118 later. Anyway, The thing is, what I'm getting at, Tamara, and I think this would be a win for the black-faced Liberals, even if they are hell-bent on these so-called carbon taxes, even if they think they're saving the planet and some of their base is supportive of this, they could reach out and say, you know what? We think there is merit to these taxes. However, during this period of time in Canada, with interest rates, people losing their jobs, high mortgage rates, et cetera, which shows no signs of abating, by the way, now is not the time. So we will suspend these taxes until we can make an economic recovery. We will put more green in your pocket. I mean, when Lori says that the average Albertan is going to be dinged another $3,500 a year, I mean, that's huge. I know it's not huge for blackface when he stays in hotels in London that are $6,000 a day with your own personal butler. But for the average worker, the average Canadian, that is a real blow, Tamara Ugolini. So I'm just saying, even if there were an environmental case behind these taxes, and I say there isn't, then just delay the implementation until people can get back on their feet, especially just coming out of the multi-trillion-dollar disaster globally that was the COVID-19 lockdowns. What say you, my friend?
I think you really hit the nail on the head here, and just goes to further reiterate that Justin Trudeau and his Liberal cabinet is so out of touch with what's happening on the ground with everyday Canadians. They're sitting up in their comfy, cushy ivory towers, not recognizing the struggle that everyday Canadians are facing to, not currently, but into the fall and the winter, heat their homes, to fuel their vehicles, to put food on the table for their families. I mean, my groceries for our family, and we have a large family, so we have a lot of mouths to feed, and I recognize that, but our groceries have gone up threefold in a year and a half. Like, it is unconscionable how much we are spending, more than a mortgage payment, more than a gas bill, exponentially on just putting good, healthy food on the table. And you hear from parents all the time that are choosing between, fresh fruits and milk and quality ingredients for their family, and having to go to the junk section because it's cheaper, it's mass produced, it's more readily available, or you see the devastating lines at the food banks and things like this. And so the fact that Justin Trudeau is willing to descend Canadians and our citizens into poverty to try to obtain, as Lori put it, some sort of moral authority over China, who's not going to listen anyway, who emits the most greenhouse gases out of any developed nation combined globally, that to me just seems like completely reckless, irresponsible leadership.
No, indeed. I believe the number for the grocery prices going up in Canada, Tamara, year over year has been 9%. That's huge. And in addition to that, have you noticed, my friend, in addition to inflation, we have that phenomenon known as shrinkage. And no, I'm not talking about George Costanza shrinkage, you cheeky monkey. I'm talking about a 750-gram block of cheese. I take a second look. It's 700 now. So we're paying more and we're getting less. And now blackface is going to increase the cost of that at, I would say, the worst possible time. But they're ideologues, Tamara. And contrary to what Laurie Goldstein was saying with his commentary, well, we have a video of convicted criminal and cabinet minister now, Steven Guilbeault, lecturing us that there is evidently no magic wand that will solve the climate crisis. Let's hear what the ex-convict has to say.
Et contrairement à ce que pourrait penser Pierre Paulette, les conservateurs, il n'y a pas un interrupteur sur un mur quelque part où on fait quelque chose qui, par magie, il n'y a plus de changement climatique. Les gens me disent, ouais, mais votre tarification carbone n'a pas empêché les feux de forêt. Mais non, il va falloir travailler là-dessus pendant des décennies. Il n'y a pas de pensée magique, il n'y a pas de poudre de fée qui va nous aider à régler la question des changements climatiques. C'est du travail acharné, soutenu, en partenariat avec les municipalités, les provinces, les peuples autochtones, les entreprises, la société civile, qu'on va y arriver.
You know, that's amazing, the hypocrisy there. He talks about indigenous societies. Who do you think one of the biggest beneficiaries are, Tamara Ugolini, when it comes to the oil sands development? It is people in the indigenous community. There are a lot of reserves that are very financially well off thanks to oil sands development. So don't give us this BS, Mr. Guilbeault. Secondly, he's talking about in terms of decades. This is going to be a decades-long solution. I'm already clutching my wallet, Tamara Ugolini. That means more and more taxation. This is preposterous. The very idea that we can tax a country out of climate change or alleged climate change is ludicrous. I mean, even if we had scientists with us today who are experts in this field, the idea of making things more expensive for us, how does that affect the 1.5% of global emissions that Canada is responsible for? It doesn't. It is a cash grab, Tamara.
Well, and that goes to show that the Justin Trudeau Liberals have to fund their bloated bureaucracy. I don't know the numbers offhand, but the bureaucracy under the Justin Trudeau regime has grown exponentially. And so this is just a simple way that he can continue to live his luxurious, lavish lifestyle, jet setting across the globe, to lecture us, the plebs, on climate change and climate alarmism. And they are using scientific experts, don't forget. They're the same ones that are responsible for climate models as they did throughout the COVID hysteria with their COVID modeling predictions that never actually came to fruition. I mean, I remember peak oil. And what about Greta Thunberg saying we have, 8 years left or something on the planet in her now deleted tweet? Like, it wasn't peak oil supposed to be in the year 2000?
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, never came to fruition.
And the other thing,
my dad
Tamara,
was telling me about another thing, which you might remember, David, because you have a lot of historical context there. But when he was a kid, the government instituted that on certain days, depending on your license plate number, you could go to the gas station and get gas depending on the last digit or the alphabetical denotion of your license plate letter.
You know,
anyway,
I don't think that happened in Canada, Tamara Ugolini, but I can tell you in certain states like California, absolutely, there were odd and even a number of days when you could go to the gas station and fill up. It was around 1973 with the formation of OPEC, which increased gas prices and, of course, ended the magical era of the muscle car. And yeah, Americans were getting in line, sometimes mile-long lines, and you had to have the right kind of license plate to fill up. So rationing was put into effect 100%. Don't give these blackface liberals any idea. But, you know, Tamara, I want to, the other thing that stood out, I just remembered it now, Guilbeault, in that condescending rant, was talking about there's no fairy dust. That's what he called it. So, there's no fairy dust out there. There's no, I guess, dilithium crystals from Star Trek, in terms of a magic solution. And yet, just yesterday, Tamara, I was covering Justin Trudeau making an appearance at a $1,700 a plate dinner in downtown Toronto. First of all, if anyone is out there and thinks that's a justified cost, I mean, $1,700, you've got more money than brains as far as I can tell. But let's talk about his entourage, Tamara. It's typically about 8 vehicles. The most popular vehicle is the supersized version of the Chevrolet Suburban SUV, which has an 8-cylinder engine, burns fossil fuels. Oh, and that's not all, folks. You know, because, yeah, blackface could pretend he's down with the save the planet narrative by getting electric vehicle SUVs, or at least plug-in hybrid vehicle SUVs, which do exist on the market. But no. That's for the schlubs out there that they're preaching to. He wants a good old-fashioned V8 under the hood. But what's really galling to Mario Ugolini is the fact that while those vehicles are waiting 2.5, 3 hours for that dinner to conclude, they're running the engine. So, yeah, the idea of blackface putting his Armani-clad ass onto either a cold or hot leather seat. Oh, no, that's never going to happen. We got the heat at full blast in the winter. We got the AC at full blast in the summer. So this garbage of Guilbeault saying, oh, there's no fairy dust, tell it to blackface, your boss, because he's burning carbon like no one I've ever seen.
Well, and that's another point in this whole climate alarmism puzzle is I thought that idling was bad for the ozone layer. Remember when it was the ozone layer and then it was peak oil? And that's kind of what I'm getting at here is this is just the same old alarmism, fear-mongering, government using this as a tool to centralize its power, continue to tax you out of everything, really. I mean, Canadians are paying, up to 53% of their income, I think the federal... the tax association Franco Terrazzano has sounded the alarm on. Yeah. So there's no end in sight here for this taxation. And it's just increasing year over year over year as the bloated bureaucracy gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Yep. And these modeling predictions continue to come out. They never come to fruition. And they've really taken a chip off the old COVID block. Once again, we have a clip here from the UK.
One second before we get to it, Tamara, I just want to add one cherry on top of the sordid sundae of Blackface's visit to Toronto yesterday. As his SUVs were idling away, by the way, breaking the City of Toronto 60-second maximum idle law, but that's okay. Blackface is above the law. We know that very well by now. As this was going on, it just so happened that yesterday, of all the major cities in the entire world, Toronto was number one in terms of worst air quality. Can you imagine? From the smoke from the wildfires that are raging. We even beat out Dubai, which is unbelievable. But so even in that kind of an environment, let those engines run. I want to make sure the AC is nice and cold for me after I deal with those suckers doling out $1,700 a plate. Anyways, I just wanted to, flag that perverse piece of irony for you, Tamara Ugolini. And why don't we carry on to the king and I, and the I being Sadiq Khan.
Mm-hmm. The mayor of London. So they've started this clock here, and this is them doing it live.
3, 2, 1. King Charles helped turn on a climate clock at a summit in London this afternoon. It triggers 150 similar clocks across the major cities of the UK, counting down the seconds to 2030. The estimated deadline for limiting climate change to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. But the UK's climate watchdog had a stern warning for the government today. The Climate Change Committee said it's confident that the government would meet its own legally binding targets for cutting emissions by the end of the decade had fallen markedly.
3. Surprise, surprise.
Hello, lovey. Wobbly jobbly. What do you think of my climate clock? By the way, I want to just say that journalist doing the report, I'm reading the copy here, he begins by saying the climate clock is a visual reminder of the urgency of the climate crisis. And then the next sentence begins, the climate emergency poses as a threat. I'm sure if I read further down, the other one they use, Tamara, is catastrophe. So what is it? Crisis, catastrophe, or emergency? I mean, they can't even get their verbiage in sync.
The clock is just a reminder to be afraid and stay afraid and be very, very afraid. And you better pay your carbon tax, or else we're all going to spontaneously combust, because the earth will just become so hot. And if you don't pay taxes, it to somehow cool it all down, then we're just going to dissolve into the abyss of the climate alarmism.
Yeah, and
remember, it reminds me of CNN. Remember when CNN had the COVID ticker, and it like the deaths, and it was just like tick, 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 and they were keeping track of all the people who had died of COVID. And it's just a way to instill that fear and hysteria into people so that they comply, is just this incessant reminder of what you're up against, the alarmism, the fear mongering. So this is just another nail in the coffin for the agenda-driven governments, arguably the globalists working across the world.
Yeah, all these climate Cassandras and others, saying doom and gloom is on the horizon. And that's a good example, CNN. But I remember very well, just 11 years ago, 2012. Remember, that was the date, according to the Mayans, the world was going to end in 2012. And people were, I came across stories of people, divesting their assets, selling their home, just waiting in a field, waiting for, something to happen. Yeah, the Mayans know best. They can project 400 years into the future, but couldn't see the Spanish conquistadors landing on their shore at the very same time they were making these predictions. That's a valid source, I would say. And also, Tamara, what happens in less than 7 years, 2030 comes, and those goals that this bogus climate clock is telling us to realize, what if they're not achieved? I mean, what then? Is there a snooze button for the climate clock, maybe? This is preposterous. You know what I'd like to see by that clock going 7 years into the future, Tamara? Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Will the Toronto Maple Leafs win a Stanley Cup by 2030? Start the clock. Bet against it, folks. Trust me. It's unbelievable. But what is the point? What is the point?
Well, and as we already have discussed, China is nowhere to be seen in any of this, and they're the largest emitter in the world. So this is all just, again, getting moral authority over them, virtue signaling, and a way to support the increasingly bloated bureaucracy that we're faced with in the monarchy, within the monarchy. We have a couple super chats. Maybe we should go to an ad break, because we're 35 minutes in. So let's go to a quick ad break, and we've got a few super chats, so we'll come back to them.
Would you like to bring our new documentary, Church Under Fire, Canada's War on Christianity, to your church or group? Our documentary tells the story of the authoritarian attacks on places of worship under the guise of public health during COVID. It documents the congregations and pastors who stood up to government overreach and paid the price for it. Now, the documentary isn't just an historical record of what happened. It explains how and why the groundwork was laid years in advance. Now, we want as many people as possible to see this documentary so that while we may forgive, we may never forget what happened. And that's why we have a special licensing option for you to bring the documentary to your church. If you're a pastor, reach out to us at savethechristians.com. You'll find a special licensing tab there. And if you're a congregant, let your church leadership know that this documentary exists and that you can have it shown in your own church. And lastly, if you know of a venue or theater who would host a screening, you can make that happen by visiting savethechristians.com. And thank you to everybody who supported and who continues to support this very important work. We could not do any of this without you. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid.
And
what
Tamara,
a great documentary.
Oh, it's a fantastic one, yeah. And you know you're going to get excellent value with Sheila Gunn Reid, our Khaleesi of Khaleesi's on the file. Tamara, since we're in the, I guess, dying days, thankfully, of...
Well, David, sorry, just before you continue, I want to share with our viewers that Church Under Fire documentary, which you can find at savethechristians.com. Right now, we have a lottery going on. So it's an exclusive Rebel News lottery where you can head on over to that page and you can sign up to win free tickets to attend one of the Church Under Fire screenings in a city near you. So already our Aylmer, Ontario screening has been sold out. They're coming up really fast. They start next week in Alberta. We'll be in Calgary July 5th, also July 6th. And then we're shifting to Ontario, Aylmer on July the 9th. That show is sold out. So I'm urging anyone who's interested in attending any of these screenings to hop on over to savethechristians.com and purchase your tickets or sign up to win a free one through the lottery that's posted on that page as well. So we'll be continuing the screenings throughout Ontario until July 11th, then heading to Saskatchewan, New Brunswick, Manitoba, and back for a nightcap, I suppose, in Edmonton on July 17th. And if you would like to see that screening come to a city near you where it's not, maybe we're working on some in British Columbia, I believe, please reach out to us. Let us know if you have a venue or a church who would be willing to host such an event, and we'd be happy to work with you to establish and set something up. So just wanted to shout out to that free lottery option, free ticket option, and urge people not to wait because we already have a show that's sold out starting next week, or sorry, the week after, July 9th.
Yeah, and you know, Tamara, I'm not surprised the Aylmer show is sold out. That is the home of Church of God. The head pastor there is Henry Hildebrandt. And I'll tell you, folks, if you've never seen a Henry Hildebrandt sermon, you are missing out. It is like, I guess, what it would be like to watch, you know, Picasso working on a masterpiece. He is absolutely fantastic. And I don't know if he's going to, you know, have some words there, but just to get to meet Pastor Hildebrandt, that's worth the price of admission in my book, Tamara. So I thought, since we're in the dying days of, is it Pride Month or Pride Season? I'm getting confused. It began as a day, then went to a week, then became a month, and now it's a season. So I think does that mean it goes past June 30th, or does it begin now in the month of May, I suppose? Who knows? But we've been chronicling what I think is a disgrace. And it's this, Tamara, if you have to put up the pride flag, okay, especially if you're a private company, you can do what you want. But don't cancel the Canadian flag. And once again, we saw a couple of players with enormous flagpoles facing the highway cancel the Canadian flag and put up the pride flag. One of them is Recipe Unlimited. You might not know the name of the company, but I'm sure you know some of the brands: Swiss Chalet, Saint Hubert, The Keg, Harvey's. They're a $1 billion food service conglomerate, and they put up the pride flag instead of the Canadian flag. You know what's funny, Tamara? Right next door to Recipe Unlimited is Meal Canada, and they have 3 flagpoles. One's the Canadian flag, one's the pride flag, and one is their own corporate flag. That's the way you do it. And the other way you don't do it is you do not have the pride flag on the same flagpole as the Canadian flag. That's not me saying this, folks. That's flag etiquette. These are the rules of flying the Canadian flag. It cannot share the same space another flag can't share the same space as the Canadian flag. And the worst violators of that are schools and school boards, Tamara. They have no respect for flag etiquette. And then, of course, we saw the Canadian flag canceled at the Canadian headquarters of Molson Coors. That's really ironic, Tamara, given that the number one selling Molson brand, I believe, is still Molson Canadian. Yeah, so we'll use the name of the country to market a beer, but the Canadian flag isn't good enough to be on our flagpole in June. But then I came across maybe the worst example of breaching flag etiquette. And that award goes to Chubb Fire and Security, their Canadian headquarters in Mississauga, Ontario. Folks, we're going to run a little video. You're not going to believe your eyes on this vandalism. This is?
It's a pride flag.
Oh, it's a pride flag?
Yeah.
Okay, because it kind of looks like a Canadian flag got merged with a pride flag.
Canadian pride flag.
Okay. Do you know what that flag is?
That flag, no, because it used to be just the Canada flag, but now I'm not sure. It changes.
David Menzies for Rebel News here at Chubb Fire and Security Canada at their Mississauga, Ontario head office. And folks, I was motoring along the 401 and there's been quite a few flag flaps lately. You know, the Pride Progress flag replacing the Canadian flag for an entire month or more in some cases. But when I was motoring along, I couldn't help but notice here's something completely different, as Monty Python would say, and it's completely disturbing too. Here, check it out. It's behind me, facing the highway, so thousands and thousands of people see this on a daily basis. It appears to be the Canadian flag, but a special kind of Canadian flag, namely the good old red maple leaf is right in the center, as it should be, but on the opposite sides there is that multicolored rainbow motif. Now, I'm pretty sure this is some kind of Pride or Progress Pride or something kind of flag for the month of June. But here's what makes this egregious. According to Canadian flag etiquette, you cannot modify the Canadian flag in any regard. And not only has this been modified, it's been completely reimagined. It's not red and white anymore, but it's red, white, and, well, I guess another 7 colors. I don't think... Yeah, so that's the skinny, Tamara Ugolini. Chubb, you have absolutely no right to desecrate the Canadian flag like that. If you want to, you can put up, I think even replacing the Canadian flag for a month with a pride flag is a better alternative. I think ultimately, what you should do if you want to literally fly your colors is have 2 flagpoles so that the Canadian flag never gets folded up and put in a closet for an entire month, but shares the parking lot with a second flag flying whatever it is you want to fly. But Tamara, I don't know about you. I looked up the rules. That is a complete violation of flag etiquette. So why are major corporations doing this? Why do they think we should be patting them on the back for, embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion, when what we see right there is something I would call brandalism?
Well, and if they don't do that, we have seen repeatedly that the 2SLGBT alphabet soup mafia will come after them. There was an incident locally in our small downtown where a business didn't want to put, and this is going back a few years now, so before this was really proliferating and becoming more mainstream and more recognizable on a monthly basis, and I guess on a seasonal basis as well. They wouldn't put a Pride sticker in their window for Pride Month or Pride Weekend, I think it still was at that time, right? Because Pride actually started as a day. There was the Pride Parade. It was one day a year, and there was the Pride festivities, and it was a debauchery and heavily sexualized, obviously grotesque displays of sexuality and whatever. It was an adult thing, and if adults wanted to go to the parade, then you kind of knew to keep children away. And then it morphed into a whole weekend, and then it was Pride Week, and now it's Pride Month, and now, as per the Canadian government, it's Pride season. So this small business didn't want to put a small Pride sticker in their window. They just didn't want any specialty hangings in their store display, and they wanted it to be just their store. And they had always had these beautiful displays in the window, and they didn't want it to be hindered or otherwise by any sort of specialty recognizable thing. And for that, they were targeted, harassed, slandered, called, transphobic, homophobic, probably racist as well, misogynist, who knows, bigots, all the names and the slander terms that come out at that point. So I think in order for companies to be shielded from that cancel culture mob that will come after you and target you if you don't virtue signal alongside this ideology, then they feel compelled to fly this flag. And if you're not now, it seems it's more of like a peer pressure thing. Now, if you're not flying the flag, well, you get singled out. You must be a bigot, far right, again, whatever the slander term of the day will be. But to me, I do see this as a big disgrace, and I wonder recourse is desecrating the Canadian flag. And I'm not sure if my screen's frozen or if that's happening on your end as well, but it looks like my internet might be lagging once again.
I think you're back in business, but
we made it through most of the
show.
show.
What I think, Tamara, is a perverse irony here to this saga. Going back decades ago with the beginning of the gay rights movement, that movement, I think justifiably, asked for tolerance and acceptance. I don't want to see anyone discriminated against. I don't want to see anyone bullied. That's not right. But those battles have been fought and won, Tamara. And now it's not about tolerance and acceptance anymore. It's about affirmation. It is the zealots in that community saying, we don't care about tolerance and acceptance now. We want affirmation. We want you to stand on an apple crate and clap and cheer and say we're doing the right thing. And also, we want to get up close and personal with your kids. You don't mind, do you? And also, we want a different set of rules, such as marching naked in a downtown Toronto street, which is what happened yet again with the Pride Parade. No charges by the police, of course. So it's not about equal rights. It's about extra special rights. And it's also about, if you do not affirm members in this community, you will be targeted, much like you talked about that little store. You will be pressured and bullied. The very things these people were fighting against in yesterdecade, now they have become the bullies. And I think you're right. I think, 2 days ago, Tamara, I was walking downtown Toronto. I felt I was drowning in rainbow-colored quicksand. I mean, those rainbow stickers and flags and replacing the Canadian flag, it was almost everywhere. It was almost like you come across a business and you go, holy mackerel, the maple leaf? What's that doing flying there? Shouldn't it be the Progress Pride flag, complete with the BIPOC vagina and the little purple flurple illustration? Because they keep modifying it, folks. Next year, I'm sure the part of the illustration will be the kitchen sink. Anything goes. Anything you are, that emblem represents you. And but I will say this, Tamara, you better be careful, because we have seen in recent months Exhibit A, Bud Light, Anheuser-Busch's stock is still down by more than $16.5 billion US. And right now, it was funny, there was a news report broke. I was speaking about this with Drea yesterday, that in some markets, Bud Light is giving buyers of a 15-pack a $15 off coupon redeemable at the cash register. And in certain states, a 15-pack of Bud Light, Tamara, sells for less than $15. So Anheuser-Busch is paying you to buy their swill right now. That's how bad the Bud Light fiasco is. They've gone from America's #1 selling beer brand, #1, to out of the top 10 in a matter of weeks. And Target, they thought it was jolly good to have big pride displays and to have toddler tutus. So if the little boy wants to identify as a little girl, and when I say little boy, I mean infant, okay? Yeah, we have a dress for him. And they thought it was a good idea to have, if you're a guy and you want to pretend you're a woman, well, we have a bikini and there's a special little penis pocket to hide your wedding tackle. Yeah, we'll cater to that. Well, guess what? $10 billion in lost stock value. Customers boycotting Target. I mean, Walmart couldn't be any more giddy than what's going on. So I guess what I'm trying to say, Tamara, as much as there was a pressure from a very local minority, which we've seen can be prone to violence. Just ask Billboard Chris about that, and the police won't do anything. I think in the bigger picture, given the Bud Light and the Target examples, maybe you just want to ignore this. Listen, if you want to wave a pride flag, if you want to wear a rainbow T-shirt, knock yourself out. But we're not flying that flag. We're not, carrying merchandise directed at children to, to carry out the narrative of changing their gender or sexual orientation. We're not getting into that. I know if I ran a business, that's where I'd be. Just do your own thing, but leave me out of this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, and I wanted to get back to what you said, where the police don't do anything, because we have a video to share here where there was public displays of nudity at a Pride festival in Toronto.
Yep.
And there were naked people, naked men in front of little kids. Yep. And Rob Primo, who's actually one of our Fight the Fines clients, if I remember correctly, he's been an advocate kind of against the mainstream narrative, starting with COVID and now shifting into this trans ideology and sexualization of children. He tried to report some of these individuals to the police, which, traditionally, historically, this would be a grotesque infringement onto these poor little innocent children. Like, we should not be exposing them to sexual deviances out in the public street. And so we have this video to share with you of Rob Primo from, I believe he's from Niagara, trying to report these indecencies, and this is what he's faced with.
Ask a police officer a question.
Sure, one moment.
Thank you.
Thank you for calling.
Hi there. I was just looking to ask an officer a question, and then I got forwarded to you. Is there? I just want to make sure I'm not working outside of any laws or anything like that. If you want to be out in the street, you have to be fully clothed, and you can't be naked or anything like that, right?
Well, I mean, there are naked people running around in the street.
Okay, but is that against the law?
That would be some mental health issues.
Oh, okay. I agree with you on that one. I'm having a hard time. Yesterday, I seen a bunch of people naked in front of children and police officers, seeing men with their penis out in front of kids, and I'm just wondering if that's acceptable.
Was that part of the Pride, you mean? Was that on the weekend?
Yeah, it was at the Pride Parade.
Yeah. So that's always the issue then each year.
Yeah. What's the issue with that? Sorry.
Well, I mean, that happens every year.
Oh, so it's kind of like it's okay for when it's at the Pride Parade, but not in other situations, obviously?
Exactly. I would say so.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Bye now.
Wow.
Yeah, so one law for thee and one law for me. In other words, if you're a nudist and you want to get naked at the Santa Claus parade, which we spoke about shrinkage earlier, not a good idea given it happens in November, a little chilly. If you get any attention from law enforcement, just say you're trans and you're okay. Definitely a double standard, Tamara Ugolini. And, the only mainstream media coverage I saw of this was a column in The Sun yesterday by our good friend Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun. He made similar calls, and basically the Toronto police spokeswoman, can I call you a woman? Spokesperson, spokesthingy? I don't know.
Oops.
She said, well, given the number of people there, I'm paraphrasing, but basically her point of view, Tamara, was it's more about keeping the peace. That's why they turn a blind eye to a criminal code violation. And Joe Warmington actually quoted the criminal code. And then, by the way, she doubled down. I spoke about this with Drea yesterday on another lie that will not go away, at least when it comes to Toronto. Given that up to 1 million people come to the Pride Parade, Tamara, no. That is a figure that is grotesquely exaggerated. If you had 1 million people at the corner of Church and Bloor, basically, and you put a lineup, it would stretch probably to Barrie. You want to see what a 1 million person congregation is? Check out Obama's 2009 inauguration. That is 1 million people. You're talking about maybe 100,000 people at best for the Pride Parade. The cops know that. They're very good at, grid numbers. They put everything in a grid, and they can come up to very accurate crowd sizes. But for some reason, they have to maintain this lie that there's 1 million people out there. And I'm sure they're being directed by their political puppet masters. But again, it is a despicable double standard. And, Tamara, I'm sure you saw the scoop we had 2 months ago of the Toronto police transgender training. And the bottom line is this. Trans people are not worthy of equal rights. They're worthy of special rights. And how do I prove that? Well, there was one module. It was about if you're a trans man, so that would be someone like you, Tamara, a biological female trying to fake that you're a man, and you're incarcerated. And I can speak from experience being a political prisoner in this country, folks. Before you go into the cell, your belt comes off, your shoelaces, your necktie, anything that can be weaponized, anything that can be used to hang yourself. But with a trans man, some of these women stuff in their underwear, a dildo, forgive, the vulgar language, I'm just calling it as I see it. And that's not a sex toy, Tamara Ugolini. That is something called a gender-affirming article. And yeah, you get to bring that into the cell with you, even though that can easily be weaponized. This is insane. This is the vast majority of society bending the knee to the lunatic fringe.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We are running out of time, so I hope we can go to a quick ad break featuring friends of ours from the Wellness Company, and then we'll come back. We'll touch on John F. Kennedy Jr. Very quickly, and then we will wrap this up with some of our super chats that we didn't get to before.
Living with spike protein in a post-pandemic world is something we all have to grapple with, whether you've had the virus, you've been vaccinated yourself, or if you're around those who were. The Wellness Company's Spike Support Formula is a daily supplement that can help you feel your best, and then stay that way. Go to twccanada.health to get back to that pre-pandemic feeling with Spike Support. Use coupon code REBEL to save 10% off these doctor-formulated products, which are rooted in science, and for a limited time, your first month's membership is only 99 cents. That's twccanada.health, coupon code REBEL at checkout. It's time to put your wellness back in the driver's seat.
Sorry, and I said JFK, I meant RFK. JFK's
I thought you had a real scoop for us there, Tamara Ugolini.
Getting really into big conspiracy theory territory there. So this, I think we have a clip of it, but this comes from the Daily Mail where RFK is confronted, RFK Jr., sorry, I need to get all my acronyms correct here, is pressed about holding, anti-vaccine claims. And he's kind of been at this that predates the COVID hysteria. But he issued some clarification in this particular interview. And I wonder, instead of delving through the written component here, can we just show the clip of where he responds to the interviewer? I think this is it here. Oh, we don't have any sound.
From the US and many parts of the world is a direct result of regular vaccines. Measles, mumps, rubella, and many diseases are preventable. And there's little to no evidence of these diseases in vaccinated population. Your vaccine stance is dangerous to the health and well-being of millions. Medical experts are deeply concerned about your message. How can we help you to come to the side of science?
What was the question? How can you help me come to my senses?
No.
Side of science?
You are a very smart person.
Okay, so, I think most people don't know what my stance is on vaccines. I've never been anti-vaccine. And I've said that hundreds and hundreds of times, but it doesn't matter. Because that is a way of silencing me. Using that pejorative to describe me is a way of silencing or marginalizing me. My position on vaccines, I think, virtually every American would agree with my stance on vaccines, which is that vaccines should be tested like other medicines. They should be safety tested. And unfortunately, vaccines are not safety tested. They're not, of the 72 vaccine doses now mandated, essentially mandated, they're recommended, but they're really mandated for American children. None of them, not one, has ever been subject to a pre-licensing placebo-controlled trial.
Yes, they have.
No.
Yeah, they have.
No.
Okay, let me just say something. Dr. Fauci and many other people for many years said this, that Bobby Kennedy, when he says that, is wrong. So I met with Dr. Fauci in 2016, and I agreed to go on Trump's Vaccine Safety Commission, and I was with Aaron Siri and Lynn Redwood and a number of other people, and we said to him, can you show us one test from any vaccine, pre-licensing safety test? And he said, I'll send it to you. I can't find one now. He never did. So we sued him. Aaron Siri and I sued HHS. And after a year of litigation and stonewalling, they said that they could not provide a single safety study for any vaccine that is on the childhood schedule, pre-licensing safety study. So anybody who wants to read that can go to the Children's Health Defense website, and you can read HHS's admission that not a single one has ever been safety tested pre-licensing. Now, what I've said is other medicines are required to do that, and we should have to do that for vaccines. If I'm wrong, show me the test, show me the study. You won't be able to, because there are none. That means that we don't know what the long-term risks are, the risk profile of those products. And I'll give you you mentioned chickenpox. So
I think we can just,
okay.
If you want to watch the full clip, then head back over to see it. But I think that's a great point. And a lot of people don't realize that the childhood vaccines, so not talking about the COVID ones, but they're only ever tested against other vaccines. So the gold standard in safety testing is in double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled clinical trials. And the key word there is having a placebo. Well, in all of the childhood vaccination schedule, the placebo was actually just another vaccine. So you can quite literally go into your doctor's office, or many of them are readily available online now. If you know the manufacturer that your doctor uses for the childhood vaccine schedule, you can ask for the product monograph, and that's the package insert. It's not the one page. They sometimes will try to give you like a one-page summary that basically just touts the safe and effective narrative. But if you ask for the actual product monograph, which is a huge piece of paper with extremely fine print and takes you probably a couple days to sift through depending on your capabilities, you will see in there that the testing that they did, the safety testing, is actually just compares whatever that particular vaccine is to another one. So usually it's a flu vaccine or another, for instance, another MMR, measles, mumps, rubella, or the DTaP, the diphtheria, pertussis, tetanus, and polio, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that a lot of people aren't aware of that. And having someone like RFK Jr. state that and show his proof through litigation and compelling the national health, anyway, I can't remember the acronym, showing that they don't have that data the proof is there in the pudding. So there's a lot of concern there where parents are slandered or smeared as being quote unquote anti-vax when they're actually just looking for real safety data. And in a lot of cases, if you're digging below the surface, you'll find that it's not actually available. So it's not about misinformation. This is literally about missing information. And I think he's really shone a light on that.
Indeed, I'm totally on side with RFK Jr. on that. I have a very personal story when it comes to the two words that triggered me the most, Tamara Ugolini, and that would be experimental vaccine. And make no mistake, that was what COVID-19 was. It takes about a decade to develop a legit vaccine. If you can do it in 5 years, that's considered greased lightning. This was developed in a matter of months. And with all the stories coming out now about what this vaccine did to certain people, it is despicable. But my personal story, Tamara, is I'm a 1962 baby. My mother was suffering from horrendous morning sickness. And what do you know, back in 1962, there was a product on the market in some markets, including Canada, and it was called thalidomide. And it was considered a miracle drug. It would get rid of morning sickness. And for whatever reason, Tamara, I don't know if it was woman's intuition or if it was a hunch, God knows what, because I'm the kind of guy, if I have a headache, I'm running to the medicine cabinet to shove Advil down my throat. But my mother never broke the seal on that bottle of thalidomide. That was a hand grenade with a pin in it in her night table that had she taken it, if anyone knows the history of thalidomide, which was approved in so many countries, our own country included, Canada, it led to stillborn babies. It led to horrific birth defects. And I'm talking, folks, babies born without arms and legs, babies born with flippers in place of arms and legs. There's a fantastic book published in 1979 called Suffer the Children, when the first thalidomide babies were entering adulthood. If it doesn't make you well up with tears, some of the descriptions, you're going to have to check your heartbeat, see if you're still alive. The point is, I remember, no names here, but I remember going even to my personal doctor, family physician, and getting like a lecture, with the implication of, what kind of an idiot are you for not getting double jab plus booster? And I brought up thalidomide. It was immediately dismissed. But why dismiss it? I'm sorry. When there is something I'm injecting into my body, Tamara, I want it double tested and triple tested and quadruple tested, and I don't want there to be a rush. And the double tragedy of thalidomide, let me tell you, when all these birth defects were traced back to thalidomide and people were going after the company responsible for this drug, they fought tooth and nail. They re-victimized the victims and the victims' families by claiming absolutely no liability, even though the testing was shoddy, to say the least. So I'm sorry. I'm going to roll the dice if there's any kind of future pandemic before I put something called an experimental vaccine into my body.
Hear ye, hear ye. Thanks, David. You really nailed